He left her on their mating night and let the whole pack believe she was unworthy. 7 years later, the Alpha King returned, not to apologize, but to claim the woman whose power could destroy every alpha alive. He didn't abandon her because he didn't want her. He abandoned her because claiming her would awaken a power meant to rewrite the laws of the wolf world. And now, the woman he broke is strong enough to reject him forever or rule them all. The whispers followed Beyoncé like shadows through the palace corridors. Empty Luna. Rejected queen. The one he couldn't even touch. 7 years. 7 years of those words carved into her skin with every pitying glance, every hushed conversation that died the moment she entered a room. 7 years of sleeping alone in a bed meant for two, of waking to cold sheets and colder silence. Beyoncé stood at her window overlooking the pack grounds, her reflection ghostly in the glass. 29 now. Still beautiful, they said. Still unmated. Still empty. The night of their mating ceremony replayed in her mind like a wound that refused to heal. She'd worn white silk that clung to her curves, flowers woven through her dark hair. The entire Shadow Moon pack had gathered to witness their Alpha King claim his chosen Luna. The moon hung full and heavy, blessing their union. Drake had looked at her like she was salvation itself. Then he vanished. No explanation. No goodbye. Just gone before the ceremonial bite could seal their bond, leaving her standing alone before hundreds of witnesses. The shame had been suffocating. His mother, the former queen, had quickly ushered everyone out with practiced grace, but the damage was done. Beyoncé, the girl who dreamed of being chosen, became the Luna who was rejected on the most sacred night of her life. Your Highness. A young Omega appeared in her doorway, eyes downcast. Even the servants pitied her. The council requests your presence for the Eastern Border report. Tell them I'll be there shortly. The Omega hesitated. They said the acting regent would handle it if you're too busy. Too busy. Translation. Too irrelevant. Without Drake's mark, without his claim, she was Luna in title only. The council made decisions around her. The pack respected her out of obligation, not devotion. She was a placeholder for a throne that had been empty for 7 years. Beyoncé had learned to survive this half-life. She managed the palace staff with quiet efficiency. She attended ceremonies with her head high. She smiled when expected and spoke when necessary. But inside, her wolf howled with a pain that never dulled. Why had he left? That question haunted her every day. Had she disappointed him somehow? Was she not strong enough, not beautiful enough, not worthy enough to be his mate? She'd replayed every moment of that night searching for the flaw, the fatal imperfection that made an Alpha King flee from his own Luna. Her wolf whimpered beneath her skin, still waiting, still hoping for a mate who would never return. Some nights, Beyoncé stood on her balcony and considered leaving. Walking away from this gilded prison, from the title that had become her cage. But pride kept her rooted. She would not give them the satisfaction of watching her run. She would not prove them right. So she'd built walls instead. Stone by stone, year by year, she'd constructed a fortress around her heart. Let them call her empty. Let them pity her. She would survive. She had to. Because deep in the marrow of her bones, beneath the hurt and humiliation, a terrible truth lived. Her soul still recognized Drake as her mate. And no amount of time or pain could sever a bond the moon goddess herself had forged. Beyoncé turned from the window, smoothing her dress with steady hands. Another council meeting. Another day of polite dismissal. Another night of sleeping alone. She'd learned to live with ghosts. But she'd never learned to stop wondering why the man destined to love her had looked at her with such hunger, and then disappeared like she was poison. What had Drake seen in her eyes that night that made an Alpha King run? The night the Alpha King vanished. 7 years earlier. Drake couldn't breathe. His Luna stood before him in white silk, moonlight painting her skin silver, and every instinct in his body screamed to claim her. Mark her. Make her his in every way that mattered. His wolf clawed at his control, desperate to complete the bond that thrummed between them like a living thing. Beyoncé smiled up at him, nervous but trusting, and Drake felt his heart crack open. She was perfect. Curves that made his hands ache, eyes that held galaxies, a spirit strong enough to stand beside an alpha king. The moon goddess herself had chosen this woman for him, and Drake had never wanted anything more in his entire life. The ceremonial chamber glowed with candlelight. Outside, the pack celebrated, their joy vibrating through the bond he shared with his people. Everything was exactly as it should be. His parents watched with pride. The elders smiled their approval. His beta stood witness. Drake stepped closer, breathing in Beyoncé's scent, jasmine, and something uniquely her that drove him wild. Her pulse fluttered at her throat, right where his mark would sit. Right where everyone would see his claim. "You're shaking," she whispered. "You're beautiful," he answered roughly. "So damn beautiful I can barely think straight." Pink bloomed across her cheeks. She reached up, fingertips grazing his jaw, and Drake leaned into her touch like a man starved. The mating bond pulled taut between them, ready to snap into place the moment he bit down, the moment their wolves merged into one. He lowered his head, lips brushing the curve of her neck. Beyoncé's breath hitched. Her hands gripped his shoulders. "Drake," she breathed. His fangs extended. This was it. The moment that would bind them for eternity. His wolf surged forward, dominant and possessive, ready to claim what was his. Then the air turned cold. Drake froze. The temperature plummeted so fast his breath misted white. The candles flickered and died. Beyoncé gasped in confusion, but Drake couldn't move, couldn't speak. An ancient power pressed against his mind, forcing him to his knees. The moon oracle materialized from shadows that shouldn't exist. She was impossibly old, impossibly powerful, draped in silver robes that seemed woven from moonlight itself. Her eyes were white, pupilless, boring into Drake's soul with a weight that made his alpha dominance feel like nothing. "No," Drake growled, fighting the compulsion holding him frozen. "Not now. Not her." Beyoncé reached for him. "Drake? What's happening?" But she couldn't see. None of them could. The oracle existed in a space between moments, visible only to Drake, speaking truths that would shatter worlds. "Alpha King," the oracle's voice echoed inside his skull. "The bond you seek will kill her." Terror unlike anything Drake had ever known exploded through his chest. "No, you're wrong. I speak only what the moon goddess reveals." The oracle glided closer, her presence suffocating. "Your Luna carries a curse older than your bloodline. The moment you complete the mating bond, the moment your wolves merge, the curse will activate. She will die in your arms before the sun rises." Drake's wolf howled in anguish. "Then we break the curse." "Tell me how to break it." 7 years, the oracle continued, relentless. 7 years of separation. 7 years for the curse to weaken. 7 years of pain for you both. Only then will she be strong enough to survive your claim. 7 years. Drake's voice cracked. "I can't," she'll think. "She will think you rejected her. The pack will think her unworthy. You will be alone." The oracle's white eyes held no mercy. "But she will live. Choose now, Alpha King. Claim your mate tonight and watch her die in ecstasy, or walk away and let her hate you for 7 years of survival." Time snapped back into motion. The warmth returned. The candles relit. Beyoncé stood before him, beautiful and alive and waiting, completely unaware that Drake had just been offered an impossible choice. Her or him. Love or survival. Now or never. Drake looked at her, really looked at her. Memorized the hope in her eyes, the trust in her smile, the way she leaned toward him like he was her whole world. His wolf screamed at him to stay, to fight, to find another way. But the oracle's words burned through his mind like acid. "She will die in your arms before the sun rises." Drake made his choice. He stepped back. Confusion flickered across Beyoncé's face. Drake. He couldn't explain. Couldn't tell her the truth. If she knew about the curse, she'd beg him to try anyway. She'd choose death in his arms over life without him. He knew her well enough to know that. So he gave her nothing. No explanation. No comfort. No goodbye. Drake turned and walked out of the ceremonial chamber, each step away from his mate feeling like death itself. Behind him, Beyoncé called his name, the sound breaking into something raw and desperate. The pack's celebration died into shocked silence. His mother gasped. The elders murmured. But Drake kept walking. Out of the palace. Into the night. Away from the only woman he would ever love. His wolf tore at his insides, rage and grief threatening to rip him apart. The mating bond stretched between them like a wound, incomplete, and agonizing. He could feel Beyoncé's shock transforming into humiliation, her confusion bleeding into pain. She would hate him. For 7 years, she would hate him. But she would live. Drake disappeared into the forest, and with every mile that separated them, he felt pieces of himself die. 7 years. He would train, become stronger, find a way to protect her when he finally returned. Build walls around his heart high enough that the pain couldn't destroy him. He would survive this. He had to. Because in 7 years, he would come back for his Luna. He would claim her the way he should have that night. He would make her his in every way that mattered. And no curse, no prophecy, nothing in this world or the next would stop him. But first, he had to let her believe he didn't want her. First, he had to break both their hearts. First, he had to become the villain in their love story, so she could live long enough for the happy ending. 7 years later, the king returns. The earth trembled before he arrived. Beyoncé felt it in her bones, a primal warning that made her wolf rise to attention for the first time in years. The windows rattled. Wolves throughout the palace grounds lifted their heads, sensing a power that made the air itself feel heavy. Then the howl came. Deep. Commanding. Unmistakable. Alpha. Not just any alpha. The alpha. The king who had abandoned his throne 7 years ago without explanation, leaving his pack leaderless and his Luna shamed. Drake. Beyoncé's hands stilled over the supply reports she'd been reviewing. Her heart lurched against her ribs, a traitorous rhythm she'd thought she'd trained out of existence. Around her, the council chamber erupted into chaos. Impossible, Elder Marcus breathed. The Alpha King returns, someone whispered. Beyoncé stood slowly, willing her legs to hold steady. 7 years. 7 years of silence. 7 years of building herself into someone who didn't need him, didn't want him, didn't break at the sound of his name. And now he was here. The palace doors slammed open with enough force to crack the marble. Guards stumbled back as Drake strode through, and Beyoncé's breath caught despite every wall she'd built. He'd changed. The man who'd left had been powerful. The man who returned was devastating. Drake had always been large, but now he was massive, pure muscle and lethal grace wrapped in black clothing that made him look like death walking. His hair was longer, pulled back to reveal a face carved from harder edges and colder angles. Scars she didn't recognize marked his neck, his hands. Battle scars. Survival scars. But his eyes. Those amber eyes that had once looked at her with hunger now burned with something darker. More possessive. More dangerous. They swept the throne room, dismissing everyone and everything until they landed on her. Beyoncé felt the impact like a physical blow. Drake's wolf slammed against hers through the incomplete bond they still shared, and she gasped, hating herself for the reaction. 7 years apart hadn't weakened their connection. If anything, it had grown stronger, more insistent, a chain she couldn't break no matter how hard she tried. Everyone out, Drake commanded. His voice had deepened, roughened into something that made her skin prickle. The royal command, and it was absolute. This wasn't a request. This was an Alpha King reclaiming his throne. The council members scrambled to obey. Even the elders who'd questioned his absence, who'd whispered about his abandonment, bowed their heads and fled like children. Within seconds, the chamber emptied, leaving Beyoncé alone with the man who'd destroyed her. Silence stretched between them, thick enough to choke on. Drake's eyes raked over her, cataloging every change. The harder set of her shoulders. The ice in her expression. The way she held herself like a queen instead of a rejected mate. Beyoncé. Her name on his lips after 7 years felt obscene. "Your Majesty," she replied coolly. "Welcome home. Will you be staying long, or is this another brief visit before you disappear for another 7 years?" Something flickered in his expression. Pain, maybe. But it vanished too quickly to identify. "I'm not leaving again." Drake moved toward her with predatory purpose. "I've come back for what's mine." Beyoncé's wolf whimpered, wanting to submit, to run to him, to finally complete the bond that had tortured them both. But Beyoncé had spent 7 years learning to control her wolf, to ignore those instincts that would only lead to more pain. She stood her ground. "What's yours?" Her laugh was sharp enough to draw blood. "You gave up any claim to me the night you walked out without a word. You don't get to waltz back in here and pretend those 7 years didn't happen." "I had reasons." "I don't care about your reasons." The words erupted from somewhere deep and wounded. "Do you know what it was like? Standing there in front of the entire pack, waiting for you to complete our bond, and watching you leave like I was nothing? Like I meant nothing." Drake's jaw clenched. "You weren't nothing. You were everything. That's why I—" "Stop." Beyoncé held up a hand, surprised it wasn't shaking. "I don't want your explanations. I don't want your excuses. I want you to leave me alone." "That's not going to happen." He was closer now, near enough that his scent washed over her pine and smoke and something wild that made her knees weak. His size dwarfed her, but Beyoncé refused to back down. She'd been backing down for 7 years. "Not anymore. You made your choice," she said quietly. "Now I'm making mine. I don't want you, Drake. I don't want this bond. I don't want anything from you except distance." The words were a lie so massive she almost choked on them. Her wolf howled in protest, clawing at her control, desperate for the mate standing inches away. But her pride, her pain, her 7 years of survival demanded she hold the line. Drake's eyes flashed gold, his wolf rising to the surface. When he spoke, his voice was rough with barely contained dominance. "You're my mate. My Luna. Mine." Something inside Beyoncé snapped. 7 years of being called empty Luna. 7 years of pitying looks and whispered mockery. 7 years of sleeping alone in a bed meant for two. 7 years of wondering what was wrong with her that made her own mate flee. All of it crystallized into fury. "No." The word came out hard and final. "You lost that right 7 years ago when you walked out on our mating ceremony. You don't get to claim me now. You don't get to call me yours. You're 7 years too late, Your Majesty." The air between them crackled with tension so thick it felt combustible. Drake's wolf pushed against hers, demanding submission, demanding she acknowledge their bond. Her wolf wanted to give in, to finally stop fighting. But Beyoncé had learned something in 7 years of abandonment. She'd learned to survive without him. She'd learned she was strong enough alone. She'd learned that sometimes the person destined to love you could hurt you worse than any enemy. "This conversation is over," Beyoncé said, proud when her voice didn't shake. "Welcome home, Alpha King. I hope your throne keeps you warmer than I would have." She turned to leave, head high, shoulders back, every inch the queen she'd become without him. Drake's hand shot out, catching her wrist. The contact sent electricity racing up her arm, the incomplete mating bond flaring to life with painful intensity. Beyoncé gasped, hating how her body responded, how her wolf surged toward him despite everything. "This isn't over," Drake growled, pulling her close enough that his breath ghosted across her lips. "Not even close. I left to protect you. Now I'm back to claim you. And nothing, not your anger, not your pride, not 7 years of pain, will stop me from making you mine." His eyes burned with such fierce possession that Beyoncé felt scorched. "Try," she whispered, the challenge clear. "And watch me reject you the way you rejected me." She wrenched her wrist free and walked away, feeling his stare boring into her back with every step. Neither of them noticed the shadows gathering in the corners. Neither of them saw the darkness that had followed Drake home. The curse wasn't broken. It was just beginning. The claim that was never made. Drake found her on the balcony where she always went when the world became too heavy. Beyoncé stood silhouetted against the moonlight, her profile carved from the same stubborn strength that had kept her standing through 7 years of abandonment. She didn't turn when he approached, but her spine stiffened. She knew he was there. She always knew. The incomplete bond between them hummed like a live wire, impossible to ignore even when they both wished they could. "I need to tell you the truth," Drake said quietly. "I don't want to hear it." "Beyoncé." "No." She whirled to face him, eyes blazing. "You had 7 years to tell me the truth. 7 years to send a letter, a message, anything that would have explained why you left me standing there like a fool. You chose silence. You don't get to ease your conscience now." Drake had faced down rival alphas, fought battles that should have killed him, survived impossible odds. But nothing compared to the pain in his mate's eyes. "If I had claimed you that night, you would have died in my arms before sunrise." The words hung in the air between them. Beyoncé blinked. "What?" "The Moon Oracle came to me during our ceremony. She showed me a prophecy, a curse placed on your bloodline generations ago. The moment I completed our mating bond, the moment our wolves merged, the curse would have activated. You would have died, Beyoncé. Died while I held you." Her face had gone pale. "You're lying." "I've done many things I regret, but I've never lied to you." Drake took a step closer, desperate to make her understand. "The Oracle said I had to stay away for 7 years. 7 years for the curse to weaken enough that you could survive my claim. 7 years of hell for both of us, or 1 night of ecstasy followed by your death. Those were my choices." Beyoncé shook her head, backing away. "No. You could have told me. You could have explained. You would have begged me to try anyway." His voice roughened. "I know you, Beyoncé. You would have chosen dying in my arms over living without me. You would have made me kill you, and I couldn't. I couldn't watch the light leave your eyes knowing I was the cause. So instead you let me believe I was unwanted?" Her voice cracked. "You let me think there was something wrong with me? Something so repulsive that my own mate fled on our wedding night." The accusation hit like a physical blow. "I felt every moment of your pain," Drake said roughly. "Through the bond we share, I felt it all. Every night you cried yourself to sleep. Every time the pack called you Empty Luna. Every moment you wondered what was wrong with you. It destroyed me, Beyoncé. But you were alive. Breathing. Safe. And that was all that mattered. You protected my body," Beyoncé whispered, tears streaming down her face now. "But you destroyed my heart." Drake's wolf howled in anguish. She was right. God, she was so right. He'd saved her life, but shattered her spirit. He'd kept her breathing, but killed something vital inside her. "I know," he said hoarsely. "I know what I did to you. I know those 7 years carved wounds that might never heal. But I would make the same choice again if it meant keeping you alive. I would endure another 7 years, another 70, if it meant you survived." "That's not love, Drake. That's torture." "It's both." He moved closer, slowly, like approaching a wounded animal. "Loving you has been the most beautiful torture of my existence. Every day away from you felt like dying. Every night I reached for you through the bond, trying to give you comfort even though I knew you'd never feel it. I trained until I bled, fought until I broke, became strong enough to protect you from anything that might try to harm you when I finally returned." Beyoncé wiped her tears away angrily. "You should have trusted me with the truth." "You're right. I should have." Drake stopped just inches from her, close enough to catch her jasmine scent, far enough to give her space to breathe. "I made the wrong choice in how I protected you. I let fear guide me instead of faith. I treated you like something fragile instead of the strong woman I knew you were." "I am strong," she said fiercely. "I survived 7 years without you. I built a life in the ruins you left behind. I became someone who doesn't need you, Drake." "I know." Pride colored his voice despite the pain. "You became a queen without a king. You survived what would have destroyed weaker wolves. You're magnificent, Beyoncé. You always were." She looked away, jaw tight. "Pretty words won't fix 7 years. I'm not asking you to forgive me." Drake's voice dropped lower, raw. "I'm asking you to understand why I did it. I'm asking you to see that leaving you was the hardest thing I've ever done. And I'm telling you that now. Now that the curse has weakened, now that you're strong enough to survive the bond, I'm not going anywhere ever again." "What if I don't want you anymore?" But her voice wavered, betraying the lie. Then I'll spend the rest of my life earning you back. Drake slowly, deliberately, lowered himself to his knees. Beyoncé gasped. An alpha king never knelt. Not to anyone. Not for anything. It went against every instinct, every law of dominance and submission that governed their world. But Drake pressed his forehead to the ground before his Luna, offering the ultimate gesture of surrender. I was wrong, he said, his voice carrying through the sudden silence. Around them, pack members who'd been passing by froze in shock. Windows opened. Wolves emerged from shadows, drawn by the impossible sight. I was wrong to leave without explanation. Wrong to let you suffer alone. Wrong to think I could protect you better with distance than with truth. I failed you as a mate, as a husband, as your alpha. And I'm begging on my knees before the entire pack for a chance to prove I can be the man you deserve. The pack murmured in astonishment. An alpha king kneeling. An alpha king begging. The world had shifted on its axis. Beyoncé stared down at Drake's bowed head, her heart thundering. 7 years of anger warred with 7 years of loneliness. 7 years of pain fought against 7 years of love that had never died despite everything. Stand up, she whispered. Drake remained kneeling. Not until you tell me if there's any chance, any at all, that you'll give me another opportunity. I don't deserve it. I know I don't. But I'm asking anyway. Beyoncé's hands trembled as she reached down, fingers brushing through his hair. The contact sent sparks racing through the incomplete bond, both of them gasping at the intensity. Stand up, Drake, she repeated, firmer now. An alpha king doesn't kneel. Not even for me. He rose slowly, towering over her again, but his eyes held a vulnerability she'd never seen before. Can love survive 7 years of silence? She asked, echoing the question that had haunted them both. I don't know, Drake answered honestly. But I'd like to find out. If you'll let me. Beyoncé looked at the man who'd broken her heart to save her life. The mate who'd stayed away to keep her breathing. The alpha who'd just knelt before his entire pack for one more chance. I don't forgive you, she said clearly. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I'm willing to see if we can build something new from the ruins you left behind. It wasn't acceptance. It wasn't love. But it was a beginning. And sometimes, that was enough. Enemies rise, the Luna awakens. The attack came 3 days after Drake's return. Beyoncé was reviewing trade agreements in the library when the windows exploded inward. Glass rained down like deadly snow as wolves poured through, their eyes gleaming with bloodlust and purpose. Not random rogues. Assassins. Her wolf surged forward, instinct overriding 7 years of suppression. Beyoncé moved faster than she'd ever moved before, diving behind a marble pillar as claws raked the air where her head had been. The incomplete mating bond screamed a warning, and she knew Drake felt it too, felt her terror, her adrenaline, her sudden desperate will to survive. The Luna, one of the assassins, snarled. Kill her before the bond completes. Before she could process those words, Drake crashed through the library doors with the force of a hurricane. His wolf was partially shifted, eyes blazing gold, fangs fully extended. The raw power rolling off him made the air itself feel heavy. He was magnificent. He was terrifying. He was hers, whether she'd forgiven him or not. Drake tore through the assassins like they were made of paper. Blood sprayed. Bones cracked. Within seconds, only one attacker remained alive, pinned beneath Drake's clawed hand, choking on his own fear. Who sent you? Drake's voice was barely human. The assassin laughed, blood bubbling between his teeth. You think you saved her? You only delayed the inevitable. The moon-blessed Luna must die before she awakens. Before she... Drake's claws tightened, cutting off the words. But the damage was done. Moon-blessed Luna. Beyoncé's heart stuttered. What did he say? Nothing, Drake growled, snapping the assassin's neck with brutal efficiency. He said nothing. Don't lie to me. Not again. Beyoncé stepped over rubble, glass crunching beneath her feet. What does moonblessed mean? Before Drake could answer, a slow clap echoed through the destroyed library. Alpha Nathaniel emerged from the shadows, his smile sharp enough to draw blood. He was leader of the Northern Territory, a rival who'd been circling their pack's borders for years. Tall, silver-haired, with eyes like chips of ice. Well, Nathaniel purred. The great Alpha King, still keeping secrets from his precious Luna. How noble. How utterly foolish. Drake moved in front of Beyoncé, protective and possessive. Leave. Now. Or you'll join your assassins. My assassins? Nathaniel laughed. Oh, Drake, I'm not here to kill her. I'm here to offer her the truth you've been hiding. Again. He turned his attention to Beyoncé, and something in his expression made her skin crawl. Tell me, Luna. Did you ever wonder why Drake really left you unclaimed for 7 years? He told me about the curse. There was no curse. Nathaniel's words dropped like bombs. At least, not the kind he described. The prophecy wasn't about you dying, sweet Beyoncé. It was about you becoming too powerful. The world tilted. Drake snarled, "Shut your mouth." You're a moon-blessed Luna, Nathaniel continued, ignoring Drake entirely. Born under a lunar eclipse, marked by the moon goddess herself. Your bloodline carries power that only activates when the mating bond completes. Power that would make you the strongest Luna in 5 generations. Power that would threaten every alpha who's grown comfortable in their dominance. Beyoncé's mind reeled. That's impossible. I don't have. You don't have power because the bond was never completed, Nathaniel explained like he was teaching a child. Drake's claim would have awakened abilities that terrify the old guard. The ability to challenge alpha commands. The ability to unite packs under your influence. The ability to rewrite pack law itself. So they convinced him you'd die if he claimed you. They made him believe love would kill you, when really, they just wanted to keep you weak. They? Beyoncé's voice was barely a whisper. The Council of Elders. The traditionalists who believe Lunas should be decorative, not dangerous. Nathaniel's smile widened. They've been trying to kill you for 3 days now because Drake came back. Because he's planning to complete the bond despite their warnings. And once he does, once you awaken, their power structure crumbles. Drake's silence was damning. Beyoncé turned to him slowly, dread pooling in her stomach. Tell me he's lying. The muscle in Drake's jaw ticked. It's more complicated than. Tell me he's lying. Her voice cracked. The Oracle showed me a vision of you dying, Drake said roughly. I saw it with my own eyes. You, bleeding out in my arms, killed by the bond itself. That wasn't a lie. But you knew about my bloodline. It wasn't a question. You knew what I could become. His silence was answer enough. Something inside Beyoncé shattered all over again. Not just her heart this time. Something deeper. Something that had been holding her together through 7 years of shame and survival. You didn't just protect me from death, she said quietly. You protected the pack from me. From what I might become. No. You kept me weak. The realization hit like ice water. All this time, I thought I was broken. Thought I was empty. But I was just what? Dangerous? Threatening? Too powerful for your precious pack hierarchy. Beyoncé, listen to me. I've heard enough. She looked between Drake and Nathaniel, seeing them both clearly for the first time. One had abandoned her out of fear. The other wanted to use her for power. Neither saw her as a person. Just a weapon or a weakness. Get out. Both of you. Beyoncé, Drake reached for her. Power exploded from her core. Pure, white-hot energy that sent both alphas stumbling backward. The library windows that hadn't already shattered burst outward. Books flew from shelves. The very air crackled with electricity that tasted like moonlight and rage. Beyoncé stood at the center of the chaos, her eyes glowing silver, her hair lifting in a wind that came from nowhere and everywhere. The dormant power was waking. I said get out, she whispered, and her voice carried the weight of command that made even an Alpha King's knees buckle. Drake stared at her in awe and terror. This was what the elders feared. This was what they'd tried to prevent. His Luna, magnificent and terrifying and finally free. Nathaniel backed toward the window, his smile triumphant. When you tire of being his guilty conscience, come find me. I'll show you what a moon-blessed Luna can truly accomplish. He disappeared into the night. Drake remained, even as the power radiating from Beyoncé made his wolf whimper in submission. I never wanted to keep you weak. I wanted to keep you alive. Those aren't mutually exclusive, Beyoncé said, the silver fading from her eyes, but not the steel in her voice. You made a choice 7 years ago to protect me from myself, from my own potential. You decided I couldn't handle the truth. The vision was real. Maybe it was. Maybe claiming me would have killed me 7 years ago. She looked at him with something between pity and fury. But you should have told me. You should have let me choose. Instead, you kept me in the dark, let me believe I was worthless, when really I was just too powerful for everyone's comfort. The truth hung between them, ugly and undeniable. Drake had saved her life. But he'd also stolen 7 years of becoming who she was meant to be. What happens now? He asked quietly. Beyoncé looked down at her hands, still crackling with residual energy. Power she'd never known existed. Strength she'd been denied. A destiny that had been locked away to keep everyone else comfortable. Now, she met his eyes. Now I decide what kind of Luna I want to be. Not what you want. Not what the elders fear. Not what Nathaniel hopes to control. Me. She walked past Drake, her shoulder brushing his, the incomplete bond flaring between them. And you're going to let me, she added softly. Because if you try to protect me from myself one more time, I'll reject this bond permanently. Oracle's prophecy or not. Drake watched her leave, his heart shattering and swelling simultaneously. His Luna was awakening. And the entire wolf world was about to change. The night the Alpha finally touches her. The blood moon rose 3 nights later, painting the sky the color of violence and prophecy. Beyoncé stood in the sacred grove where Luna ceremonies had been held for generations. Ancient trees formed a cathedral around her, their branches reaching toward the crimson moon like supplicants seeking answers from an indifferent god. She'd sent word to Drake. Not a request. Not an invitation. A command. Come to me. Tonight. Under the blood moon. We end this. Power hummed beneath her skin now, constant and intoxicating. Since the attack, since learning the truth, her abilities had been surfacing in unpredictable waves. She'd shattered a mirror with a look. Commanded wolves to sleep with a whisper. Felt the pulse of every living thing within a mile radius. The elders had locked this away. Convinced Drake it would kill her. They'd been right to be afraid. But wrong about everything else. The air shifted. Beyoncé didn't need to turn to know Drake had arrived. She felt him through the incomplete bond, a presence that called to something primal in her chest despite all the anger, all the pain, all the betrayal. You came, she said. You knew I would. Drake's voice was rough, cautious. He'd learned not to presume anything with her anymore. Beyoncé, what are we doing here? She finally turned to face him. Drake's breath caught. She wore white again, not the elaborate ceremonial gown from 7 years ago, but something simpler. A dress that flowed like moonlight, leaving her shoulders bare. Her dark hair cascaded down her back, unbound. She looked like a goddess. Like the moon-blessed Luna she'd been born to be. I've made my choice, Beyoncé said quietly. Drake went very still. What choice? Whether to complete the bond or sever it permanently. The words hung in the crimson air between them. Drake's wolf howled in panic, clawing at his control, terrified she'd choose severance. 7 years of sacrifice, 7 years of pain, all for nothing if she rejected him now. Tell me what you want, Drake said hoarsely. Whatever it is, I'll give it to you. My throne. My pack. My life. Just tell me what you need. The truth. Beyoncé stepped closer. The complete truth this time. Did the Oracle really show you my death? Or did she show you my power and the elders convinced you it was the same thing? Drake's jaw clenched. Both. Explain. The vision showed you dying in my arms. But you were right, it also showed what came before. You, blazing with silver light. Power pouring from you like a flood. The elders were there in the vision, and they were afraid. Terrified of what you'd become. He dragged a hand through his hair. The Oracle said the bond would kill you. The elders said your power would destroy the pack hierarchy. I didn't know which prophecy to believe, so I chose the one that kept you breathing. You chose wrong. I know. You should have trusted me with the decision. I know that too. Drake moved closer, close enough that his scent surrounded her. But I can't regret keeping you alive, Beyoncé. Even if you hate me for it. Even if you reject me tonight and I spend the rest of my existence alone. You're breathing. You're here. You're magnificent. That's worth any price. Beyoncé's eyes burned. You're an idiot. Probably. A controlling, overprotective, self-sacrificing idiot who thought he knew better than everyone, including the moon goddess herself. Definitely. A ghost of a smile touched his lips despite the gravity of the moment. And I should reject you. She stepped closer still, until they were nearly touching. I should sever this bond and walk away and never look back. Find someone who trusts me, respects me, doesn't try to protect me from my own destiny. You should, Drake agreed, though the words clearly cost him. You deserve better than what I've given you. I do. Beyoncé reached up, her fingertips grazing his jaw. The contact sent electricity racing through the incomplete bond, both of them gasping. But here's what I've realized over these past 3 days. You made terrible choices. You hurt me in ways that might never fully heal. You stole 7 years we can never get back. Drake closed his eyes, bracing for rejection. But you did it because you loved me. Her voice softened. Stupidly. Destructively. Imperfectly. But you loved me enough to walk away from everything you wanted. You loved me enough to become the villain in our story, so I could live long enough for a happy ending. His eyes opened, amber burning into hers. I'm not saying I forgive you, Beyoncé continued. I'm not saying those 7 years don't matter. They do. They always will. But I'm also not willing to let fear, yours or mine, steal any more of our time. Beyoncé. The Oracle said claiming me would kill me. Maybe she was right. Maybe completing this bond will destroy me. She smiled, fierce and beautiful. But I'm moonblessed, Drake. I'm stronger than anyone believed. And I'm tired of being afraid of my own power. She took his hand, placing it over her heart. The bond flared between them, incomplete and aching. If loving you kills me, she whispered, then I choose it anyway. I choose us. I choose the bond. I choose to find out what we could have been if fear hadn't ruled us both. Drake shook his head, even as his wolf roared in triumph. You don't know what you're asking. The prophecy. Prophecies can be wrong. Or incomplete. Or misinterpreted by elders with their own agendas. She pulled his hand to her throat, right where his mark would sit. Right where the bond would seal. But even if it's right, even if this kills me, at least I'll die as myself. Fully awakened. Fully claimed. Finally complete. I can't, his voice cracked. I can't watch you die. Then don't. Beyoncé's other hand cupped his face, forcing him to meet her eyes. Claim me. Complete the bond. And trust, really trust. That I'm strong enough to survive what comes next. The blood moon reached its zenith above them, bathing the grove in crimson light. Around them, the pack had gathered in silence, drawn by some instinct that tonight would change everything. The elders stood rigid with fear. The younger wolves watched with hope. And Drake stood frozen between love and terror. Please, Beyoncé breathed. After 7 years of waiting, of hurting, of wondering what was wrong with me, please, Drake. Let me be whole. Something in him shattered. Drake crushed her against him with a sound between a growl and a sob. His forehead pressed to hers, breath ragged, control hanging by a thread. If we do this, he said hoarsely, there's no going back. The bond is permanent. You'll be tied to me for eternity. I've been tied to you since the moment the moon goddess chose us for each other. She smiled through tears. Now make it official. Drake's wolf surged forward, dominant and desperate. His fangs extended fully. The alpha command in his presence made every wolf in the grove drop their heads in submission. Everyone except Beyoncé, who stood tall and waiting and finally ready. You're sure? One last check. One last chance for her to change her mind. I've never been more sure of anything. Drake lowered his head to the curve of her neck. His fangs grazed her skin, and Beyoncé shuddered, the incomplete bond screaming for completion. I love you, he whispered against her throat. I've loved you every second of 7 years. And I'll love you until my last breath. Then prove it. Drake bit down. The world exploded. Power erupted from Beyoncé like a supernova, silver light blazing so bright the blood moon seemed dim by comparison. The mating bond snapped into place with enough force to drive them both to their knees. Drake's mark burned on her throat, claiming her before the entire pack, before the moon goddess herself. And Beyoncé blazed. Every dormant ability awakened at once. She felt every wolf in the territory, every heartbeat, every breath. She felt the earth beneath her, the moon above, the ancient power flowing through her bloodline finally freed. She was Luna. She was queen. She was moon-blessed and magnificent and alive. So beautifully, impossibly alive. The prophecy shattered like glass. Beyoncé didn't die in Drake's arms. She ascended. Power and light and destiny merging into something the elders had feared because they couldn't control it, couldn't contain it, couldn't comprehend what a truly awakened Luna could become. The silver light faded slowly, leaving Beyoncé standing in Drake's embrace, his mark fresh on her throat, the completed bond singing between them. She was breathing. She was whole. She was his. And he was finally hers. The pack erupted in howls of celebration. The blood moon seemed to glow brighter, as if the moon goddess herself approved. Even the elders stood in stunned silence, watching their worst fears transform into their greatest strength. Drake pulled back just enough to see her face, tears streaming down his own. "You're alive. I told you I was strong enough. You're not just strong." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "You're everything. My Luna. My queen. My mate." Beyoncé smiled against his mouth. "Say it again." "Mine." He kissed her deeper, the bond blazing between them. "Finally, completely, eternally mine." "Yours," she agreed. "And you're mine too. Don't ever forget it. Never again." Under the blood moon, in front of the entire pack, the Alpha King finally claimed the wife he'd left untouched for 7 years. And the moon-blessed Luna proved that sometimes love was stronger than prophecy. Sometimes trust was more powerful than fear. And sometimes the bond everyone said would kill her was exactly what she needed to truly live. The pack gathered in the grand hall the morning after the blood moon, but this was no celebration. This was a reckoning. Beyoncé stood beside Drake on the dais, his mark fresh on her throat, the completed bond thrumming between them like a heartbeat. She wore crimson, the color of the moon that had witnessed her awakening, the color of blood and rebirth and power that could no longer be denied. She looked every inch the queen she'd become. Drake had called this assembly, not as Alpha King imposing his will, but as a man ready to answer for his failures. The elders sat in their traditional places of honor, their faces carefully neutral. They knew what was coming. They'd tried to prevent it for 7 years, and now they would face the consequences of their interference. 7 years ago, Drake's voice carried through the hall, commanding but not dominating. "I made a choice that affected every member of this pack. I left my Luna unclaimed. I abandoned my throne. I disappeared without explanation, leaving chaos and shame in my wake." Silence. The pack waited. I was told my mate would die if I completed our bond. I was shown a prophecy that terrified me into believing love would kill her. His hand found Beyoncé's, threading their fingers together. So I ran. I told myself it was noble, selfless, the ultimate sacrifice to keep her breathing. Drake's jaw tightened. I was wrong. A murmur rippled through the crowd. I was wrong to make that choice alone. Wrong to leave without explanation. Wrong to let Beyoncé believe she was unwanted, unworthy, when the truth was I feared her power more than I trusted her strength. He turned to face her fully, and Beyoncé saw the raw honesty in his eyes. "I failed you as a mate. I failed this pack as an alpha. And I failed myself as a man who claimed to value truth above all else. Your Majesty," Elder Marcus rose, his voice placating. "You did what you thought was necessary. Sit down." The command came from Beyoncé, her voice carrying a Luna's authority that made the elder drop back to his seat like a puppet with cut strings. Every eye turned to her. Let's discuss what was necessary, Beyoncé said, stepping forward. Silver light flickered in her eyes, a reminder of the power they'd tried to suppress. You convinced my mate that loving me would kill me. You manipulated a prophecy to keep me weak and controllable. You denied me 7 years of growth, of power, of becoming who the moon goddess intended me to be. The elders shifted uncomfortably. Why? Beyoncé's question cracked like a whip. Because a moon-blessed Luna threatens your comfortable hierarchy? Because a queen with real power might challenge your authority? Because strong women frighten old men who built their influence on keeping us decorative and silent? You don't understand the old ways, Elder Teresa began. I understand perfectly. Beyoncé's smile was sharp. You've ruled from the shadows for generations, whispering in alpha ears, shaping decisions to maintain your control. Drake was supposed to be another puppet. But he loved me too much to let you use him to destroy me completely. She looked at Drake, and something softened in her expression. He made terrible choices. But at least they were his choices, motivated by love rather than fear of losing power. Drake squeezed her hand, gratitude and regret warring in his eyes. So here's what happens now, Beyoncé announced, her voice ringing with authority. We rewrite the rules. No mate will ever be abandoned again without consequence. No Luna will be kept weak for the comfort of those around her. And no council of elders will manipulate prophecies to maintain control over those stronger than themselves. You cannot simply, Elder Marcus sputtered. I can. Silver light blazed around Beyoncé, making her look like the goddess she was named for. I'm moon-blessed. The bond didn't kill me, it awakened me. I can challenge any alpha command in this room. I can unite packs under my influence. I can rewrite pack law itself. Everything you feared I would become? I am. And there's nothing you can do to stop it. The pack erupted. Some cheered. Others looked terrified. The younger wolves held their approval while the traditionalists muttered in dismay. Drake stepped forward, silencing them with a gesture. My mate speaks with my full support. The old ways have caused enough damage. It's time for change. Starting with this, Beyoncé continued. Any alpha who abandons their mate will face immediate challenge for their position. Any Luna who is rejected, shamed, or diminished will have the right to seek justice through pack law. And any elder who manipulates prophecies or withholds information from an alpha or Luna will be stripped of their title and exiled. This is madness, Elder Teresa gasped. This is evolution. Drake's voice was hard. We've hidden behind tradition for too long, using it as an excuse to keep power concentrated in the hands of the few. No more. He turned to address the entire pack. I publicly admit my failure. My silence nearly destroyed the woman the moon goddess chose for me. My fear almost cost us the strongest Luna our pack has seen in generations. I let shame and secrecy poison what should have been our greatest strength. The words echoed through the hall. I don't ask for forgiveness, Drake continued. I've earned the anger, the doubt, the loss of trust. But I'm asking for a chance to prove that together, my Luna and I, ruling side by side, we can build something better than what came before. Beyoncé stepped closer to him, presenting a united front. We've both paid the price for 7 years of separation. We've both felt the cost of fear ruling over love. But we're still here. Still standing. Still fighting for this pack and each other. She looked out over the assembled wolves. Some of you called me Empty Luna. Some pitied me. Some mocked me. I don't blame you, I was kept weak by design. But that ends today. I am your queen. Not because I'm Drake's mate, but because I've earned this position through 7 years of surviving what should have broken me. The younger wolves were standing now, eyes bright with hope and admiration. We understand if you need time to accept these changes, Drake added. But they're not negotiable. The pack hierarchy has already shifted. The old guard no longer rules from shadows. And any who can't accept a strong Luna standing equal to her alpha king is welcome to challenge me for leadership. Silence. No one moved. Even the elders, for all their bluster, understood they'd lost. The power had shifted irrevocably. Finally, Beta Marcus, Drake's second in command who'd stayed loyal through 7 years of chaos, stepped forward and dropped to one knee. I accept Queen Beyoncé as my Luna. I pledge my loyalty to the new order. One by one, the younger wolves followed. Then the warriors. Then the pack members who'd watched Beyoncé survive with dignity when others would have crumbled. The tide had turned. The elders had no choice but to kneel or leave. Most chose to kneel, though their resentment was palpable. A few elderly wolves stood and walked out, unable to accept a world where their manipulation no longer held power. Let them go, Beyoncé thought. We're building something better. When the last wolf had pledged loyalty, Drake turned to Beyoncé. In front of everyone, he took her face in his hands and kissed her, not with dominance, but with reverence. "Thank you," he whispered against her lips. "For being strong enough to survive my mistakes. For choosing us despite everything I put you through. For becoming the queen I always knew you could be. Thank you for coming back," she whispered in return. "For kneeling when you could have demanded. For admitting your failures when you could have hidden behind power. For trusting me to be strong enough to stand beside you instead of behind you." They stood together on the dais, Alpha King and Moonblessed Queen, no longer separated by silence and shame, but united through pain and power and a love that had survived 7 years of prophecy and fear. The pack held their approval. The bond sang between them, complete and unbreakable. And somewhere, the moon goddess smiled. 3 months later, Beyoncé stood in the same sacred grove where Drake had finally claimed her. But this time, she wasn't alone. Young Lunas from neighboring packs surrounded her, some recently mated, some still waiting, all hungry for the knowledge that had been denied their predecessors. "You don't have to be weak to be loved," Beyoncé told them, her voice carrying the authority of someone who'd learned this truth the hardest way possible. "Your power doesn't make you dangerous. It makes you valuable. Essential. Divine." The young Lunas listened with wide eyes, some crying, some smiling, all recognizing themselves in her story. Drake watched from the tree line, his chest tight with emotion. This was what he'd almost destroyed. This strength. This wisdom. This queen who could have been lost to fear and manipulation. Never again, his wolf vowed. Never again would they let anyone cage her light. That night, they lay tangled together in bed, the bond humming contentedly between them. Drake traced the mark on Beyoncé's throat, his claim, yes, but also her choice. Her power. Her decision to trust despite every reason not to. "Do you regret it?" he asked quietly. "Choosing the bond even after everything?" Beyoncé considered the question seriously. "I regret the 7 years we lost. I regret the pain we both endured. I regret that fear almost stole our destiny." She turned to face him, her eyes clear and honest. "But I don't regret choosing you. Choosing us. Choosing to be strong enough to love the man who hurt me because he loved me too much." Her fingers traced his jaw. "We're not the fairy tale couple who lived happily ever after from the moment we met. We're the story of how love survives when it's tested. How it grows stronger in the breaking and healing." Drake pulled her closer, breathing in her jasmine's scent mixed with his own. "I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you never doubt your worth again." "I know." She smiled against his chest. "Because now we rule together. We heal together. We build something better than what came before together. From rejection to royalty. From silence to strength. From empty Luna to Queen of Wolves." Beyoncé had survived 7 years of abandonment only to discover she'd never been weak, just waiting to awaken. And Drake had learned that sometimes the greatest act of love wasn't protection, but trust. Together, they would rewrite what it meant to be Alpha and Luna. Together, they would prove that the bond everyone feared would destroy them had actually saved them both. Together, they would reign, not as king and consort, but as equals forged in the fire of pain and transformed into something unbreakable. The moon goddess had chosen well. And finally, after 7 years of prophecy and fear, the Alpha King and his moon-blessed queen learned to choose each other. Every day, every moment, every heartbeat, forever.